Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of The Soul of a Story, the podcast that asks writers to share why they wrote what they wrote about and to get to the bottom of creativity and how we take that to finished products. Today, I'm very happy, excited to introduce you to my guest, Steve Zettler. He is an accomplished actor and author. He's written scads of books and plays and screenplays and everything. A writer's writer. He has new books coming out. I read one of his books recently, Leave the Kid Alone. I loved it, a memoir. But he is not to be typecast in anything as a writer or an actor. He is a true original. Served our country, which I value, and just a very supportive person, I find. So, welcome, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing well, John. Thank you for having me on. Just as I said, I've watched some of the other episodes, and they're tons of fun.
My pleasure. And Steve and I, our connection is also through a great publisher, Vine Leaves Press, who I know we both value, and the wonderful Jessica Bell and crew. Such a good publisher for writers. Steve, where are you coming in from? Where do we see you
I,
from? Where
I'm
are you?
in I'm in Philadelphia, a
Okay.
section of city called Society Hill, which
Okay.
is yeah, it comes with a disclaimer because it's
Okay.
uh, named for William Penn Society of Free Traders, so it's ironically kind of a almost a union name rather than a high society name. But it's a lovely neighborhood. It's if you ever you went to
Yeah.
Villanova, but for anyone else is visiting Philadelphia, it's really the most charming section of the city. Great for walking around, cobblestone streets, brick sidewalks,
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Beautiful.
And
Is it
now
near is
with
it
a
near
ton of snow in it.
Pennsylvania University, right?
Beg your pardon?
It's near UPenn. It's near
Well,
UPenn.
well, University of Pennsylvania is in West Philadelphia, so it's on the other
Okay.
side of the Schuylkill River. So
Okay.
Society Hill is back downtown, if you will, closer to the Delaware River.
I see. Yeah, I went to school in Villanova and I lived for a couple years right outside Philadelphia. Such you're very right. It's such a great walking city. It's like it feels so historic all the time and charming. And the Schuylkill, my friend used to always say the deep and dark and mysterious Schuylkill. But I love the Schuylkill because of Boathouse Row. If
Yeah.
anyone's
Oh,
ever
yeah.
been,
It's
I think it's
beautiful.
so beautiful at night and so pretty. And you got the museum there, right? Right at the
Yeah.
top. Yeah. And Steve, you live most of your life in that area?
Well, as you said, that I was in the service. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18 years old, and uh, after I got out, I moved to New York City and went to the New York Institute of Photography on the GI Bill. So I worked as a photographer for a number of years in New York, and then I fell into taking uh, headshots for actors, and then I that progressed into taking um, publicity shots for mostly off-Broadway shows and off-Broadway shows,
Oh,
and then I there's famous line from a chorus line where the one character's looking at the dancers. He says, "I can do that." So I was looking at the actors and said, "I can do that. I mean, who can't do that?" So then I fell into acting, and then
oh,
um, was lucky enough to be cast in a play that won the Pulitzer Prize, and that was a nice step up. And I worked in theater in New York, and then went out to California to work in film and television, and
hmm.
got um, yeah, got some nice roles, but not enough to keep the career going. Um, Back in those days, and this is back in the 80s.
Hmm.
Bald was not really a sellable feature.
Don't say
It
that
is
to
now.
Telly
It is now. I
Savalas.
mean, everybody's got their head shaved,
Yeah.
but back then it was. Although I have to admit, I did get a hairpiece at one point when I was out in California, and the first audition I went to, the casting director said to me, "What's that on your head?"
Oh,
I said, "It's a hairpiece." He said, "Well, the only reason we cast you anything is because you're bald. You're the only bald guy in California. Otherwise, we wouldn't bother
take
with
it
you."
off.
So, so it's off with the hairpiece. That was the end of that.
What a
But then
brilliant.
my wife, Cordelia, was working on a novel out there, and she had worked we met as actors, and she was an actor in New York and had a small part on a soap opera,
Mm,
um, One Life to Live. And then when we went out to California, she was working on a novel and finished it. And I mean, these were the days when you sent, a paper version of the book into a publisher. You had to
right.
print it up, and it was 450 pages, and you mailed it off. And she was not getting um, anywhere with it, no, not a lot of interest. So at church, we sat next to Carol Lanning, who was Charlton Heston's personal secretary.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
Cordelia was complaining about this lack of interest in her book, and Carol said, "Well, let me just send it to the boss," meaning Charlton Heston. Let me send it to the boss's editor in New York City, which she did, and that was Simon and Schuster, Michael Korda, and
Wow.
then his right hand man Chuck Adams read it and loved it and
Mm,
offered her a contract.
wow.
So, um, but he said you need an agent, and so he sent her to Irving Lazar, is better known as Swifty Lazar,
Sure, sure.
um, and so that was her agent,
Wow.
which was a good and a plus and minus because he really focused on celebrity biographies. So she was writing fiction. So
Mm,
he although he negotiated a nice contract for her and everything else, um, she probably would have been better going with a New York agent because that's where publishing is,
yeah.
in the
Yeah.
United States. Um, but anyway, then I decided to write a novel
Mm,
and gave it to Irving's assistant and he loved it and
mm,
sent it off to Onyx, which was a division of Penguin Putnam, and they offered me a 2-book deal, and so
oh,
that was so I was incredibly simple for me, because it's like crazy trying to get an agent, trying to do this, trying to do that. Um, anyway, he still represents my stuff potentially for film out
uh-huh.
there, if that should happen. But anyway, so I had a pretty easy go of it breaking into
Well, you
writing.
make it sound easy. You got to write them. You got to
Yeah,
do
but you
all
got to
that.
write the book. Yeah, there's that part.
I was gonna make the joke like it's the normal everyday. Go to the Marines, go to Vietnam, come back, take pictures on Broadway, decide to be an actor, go out. We all follow that same path. Let me take you back. Why the Marines?
Well, this is it was not a gung-ho move. Let me explain that. The draft board in Philadelphia, physical, where you get your physicals, 401 North Broad Street. And anybody who grew up in Philadelphia gets shivers when they walk by 401 North Broad Street. The building's still there.
Right.
Um, but anyway, I had gone down. I was 18 years old. I got my call for the physical, went down, was 1A, was clearly going to get drafted in a matter of weeks, if not days. And
Hmm.
at this point, I was living in Newtown, Pennsylvania, which is in Bucks County outside of Philadelphia. And uh, myself and two of our friends were drinking beers, and they were going to go join the Marine Corps. So um, I said, I'll go down with you. And um, so we went down to see the Marine Corps recruiter. And to make a long story short, I ended up joining the Marine Corps. Uh, our thinking, or their thinking was gung ho. They were gung ho for the Marine Corps. My
Right.
thinking was that the Marine Corps had a 60-day delay program. So you joined, you had 60 days before you had to go to boot camp.
Hmm.
Boot camp was 16 weeks long, so that's 4 months. There was infantry training all Marines take, which was 4 weeks. There's another month, so that's 5 months. Plus, I had the 2 months already to skip. So now
Right.
I'm 7 months away from having joined the Marine Corps. And I was so smart, they were clearly going to make me a jet mechanic or something like that, and that would have
Yeah,
been extensive training. And by
that's
the
right.
time that training was over with, the war in Vietnam would be over with.
Right.
So that's the thinking of an 18-year-old,
Smart.
so
Well, not
so
bad.
I joined the Marine Corps, got my 60 days delay. Well, but within that 60 days, the Marine Corps shortened boot camp to 8 weeks. So they were two of my months out the window. They were gone. They
Right.
shortened infantry training to 2 weeks. Um, so there was a half a month gone. And I was made a field radio operator, which was a
Okay.
4-week school where two things. They taught you how to print.
Hmm.
So, and believe it or not, guys flunked out of that printing part of it,
Sure. I believe
but
it.
they were smart because by flunking out of radio school, you were dropped down to a switchboard operator.
Oh,
Now there's no switchboards out in the field,
no,
so the
no,
smart guys flunked out.
you're in the back.
Yeah. So anyway,
Hmm.
so I was in Vietnam just about 6 months after I showed up for boot camp.
Wow. And how long did you stay there? How
I
long?
stayed. The the normal Marine Corps tour was 13 months. One of my two friends came over to Vietnam, and through some bizarre quirk of events, was in the same platoon as me. Came over and went to the same platoon as me.
Uh-huh.
So when it came time for me to go home, he still had 4 months to do. So I extended my tour for 4 months so we could come
Oh,
home
really?
together. So I was there
Wow.
17 months.
Wow. I'm grateful. My uncle did two tours in Vietnam, and special people, really good. And I don't know too many Marines, but all of them I met, I like them. They're all I don't know something about them. They're all I don't know. They're just and they're very humble guys. I know I like how you say gung ho, and I'm sure there's an element to it, but they all seem very kind of like I'm gonna project, but they all seem like I don't have to show you I'm tough because I am. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I don't know. So
Well, when I
so
was
you,
doing this Pulitzer Prize winning play
yeah.
in New York, James Pickens Jr. is an African American actor. He was on one of the medical shows. I forget what's it called? Grey's Anatomy. He's on Grey's Anatomy for a long time, and Jim's um 6'3", 6'4", and just built like a rock, and I'm 5'8" and skinny, and we were talking about something, and he said to me, he said, "Yeah, well, I guess not too many people mess with you, do they?" I'm thinking, look at you, you're a giant, as you say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, anyway, yeah, they say watch out for the little guys.
Yay. Well, listen, no one, it's the heart. So you come back, you go to New York, you go to school for, did you say for film? You wanted to do
No,
film?
photography.
Photography. So
Yeah,
you
so
had
it
an
was
interest in
interesting.
photography.
I kind of lost interest in that because
Yeah,
back then it was all negatives and, a lot of darkroom work. And I always maintained that I could take any crappy black and white photograph and turn it into a gallery print in the darkroom.
I bet you could.
Um,
The one
but
thing I, the one thing again, I know a little bit about everything and not enough about enough. But the one thing meeting photographers and filmmakers and all that, they're really good with tech. They like the whole mechanizations, of it too. It's not just that they have the great eye. Is that you? Do you kind of like the process of film or the cameras? Were you sort of interested in that kind of the mechanization of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you go back to the 40s and 50s and even earlier than that, that the true photographers like to frame it in the camera, and they
Yeah,
never cropped anything. I was not that finicky,
yeah,
I was so I wasn't insistent that I had to
right,
have it exactly like Ansel Adams. Everything
right.
is 8 by 10. He used an 8 by 10
Yeah,
camera, and
yeah.
he
I
printed
love
it
Ansel
full
Adams. Yeah,
frame, and he never edited anything whatsoever. And a lot of them, Eugene Smith, a lot of them are, same thing. They would never consider editing in the
right.
darkroom. But I was not that finicky.
Yeah.
I like playing around in the
What
darkroom.
about so I grew up in Rochester, New York, the home
Yeah,
of Kodak, Kodak, Kodak,
yeah,
Kodak, Kodak, Kodak. Um, Did you use a Kodak camera? Can you please tell me you
I
did?
got I think it's in the memoir that comes out in July that
Okay.
I had asked Santa Claus for a Brownie camera, and I don't know if Brownie was actually a Kodak. I think it was a Kodak camera.
Yeah.
Of course, all the film was Kodak too. So,
All the film. Now I think Kodak has only one kiosk left in the whole world. It's like, I think that some movies, the directors or whatever, they'll still film it on that paper because it's something about the paper. But yeah, what a
well, I think
world.
that the whole Brownie camera, the Kodak cameras really were just kind of a hook. So you had to buy the film.
You had to buy the
They
film.
couldn't sell a film if you didn't have a camera. So the whole hook was to sell you a cheap camera. So you had to buy the
Yeah,
film.
no, Kodak was what a beautiful company in Rochester, but they weren't ready for the digital. They got kind of
Yeah.
taken away. But so you move into acting and you obviously were good at it and liked it and all that. And then you wrote your first. So you kind of flipped and said, "No, I wrote a novel." But how? Give me before we get into it about more about the soul of the story, but just tell me how that kind of like, just on how did you become a writer? Like, how did
Well,
you know to
again,
write?
I don't know. I'm just dumb enough to look at something and say, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. So I
Okay.
think that's so my wife had her book published. Things were not working out for me as an actor in California. It just wasn't making enough money at it. So um, I just started writing a novel, a thriller. It's a thriller. So, and I took a course out there with John Truby, which was just a screenwriting course. It was a wonderful course. I don't know if John's still doing that or not, if he's even still around. But um, I took that course after I wrote the novel, and I said, "Wow, I did that! I did that! I did this! All those elements were in there, and but I think acting is just a fabulous background for
Hmm.
writing. Not so much literary fiction, but maybe so. I don't know, but certainly for thrillers and whatnot. You analyze character.
Hmm.
Whether it's stage or film acting, you need to sit down and figure out who this person is, how they grew up. It doesn't come out in the film or on stage, but you need to create a whole life for this person. Is how where do they come from? What kind of upbringing they had? What were their parents like? Where did they work when they were a teenager? And you have to do all this work as an actor.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to. I mean, there's a lot of people who just memorize, as like, I don't know who was it, Spencer Tracy who said, memorize the lines and don't trip over the furniture. So I think there's a lot of actors that approach it that way, and they get
Right.
away. They do it because they're have a nice relaxed demeanor and they have a very interesting uh, face that the camera loves. And so,
Right.
but most actors really have to, especially stage, you really have to do a lot of homework, as they say.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so it's great background for a writer because you create um, your main characters or your characters, all characters, and you have to have that backstory for them,
Right.
even though it doesn't come out in the book.
Right.
Um, it's every lead character in every book I've written, which is, well, 20, considering the, excuse me, the 12 that my wife and I co-authored, the main character is an ex-Marine. I just can't get away from it. It's just like, it covers a lot of the backstory,
He's our
right there,
character. It's not me.
I'm constantly throwing in little things in there that
He has hair. He's
yeah,
got hair.
his hair. Now they all have hair. None of them are long. Just, I have to fantasize about something.
Yeah,
So,
sure, sure. I like what you say there. I've had the good fortune last maybe 10 years. I've been writing every now and then with a couple actors, and it has given me a different perspective, and I do see the correlation. And especially character building, getting into, and I wrote an article recently about a silent film star, and in the research of it, there was another silent film star named Lillian Gish, and they asked her, "Do you have to memorize the lines before a movie? Because it's a silent film. You're not." And she's like, "We do rehearsals, full rehearsals. where we're almost off book. And they asked her, well, why would you do that if you're not going to voice? She goes, in order to feel it, you have to voice it first.
Yeah.
And so that's what I, when I hear you say that, I think writers should take drama classes or act or, and vice
Yeah.
versa. I see complete symbiotic relationship there. So let's bring us up to the present day. So I had the good fortune of reading your memoirs coming out this year. Your
Yeah,
the
July,
leave
July.
Leave the Kid Alone, which I'll put links in all this for your books and all that, but it's really fun. It's really fun. It's really interesting. It's an Americana that I think everyone's going to enjoy and see something. And you have another book coming out, right, soon.
Yeah, after that, and again, we're both with the same publisher,
Yeah,
Vine Leaf Press, which is really just a wonderful group
yeah.
of mostly women, um, incredibly supportive people. But yeah, so the Leave the Kid Alone comes out in July, and then December of 2027 is Come Go With Me, which is a, a very dark noir mystery set in Philadelphia in 1957.
Oh, I like that. I like that. When I hear very dark, I hear interesting. Okay. So all that said, Steve is prolific. He's a writer and he's an, I would say, artist encompass it. So let's get to why people paid a lot of money to come here today, even though it's free, on the side. The soul of a story. So I like to challenge, and it's hard. Someone like Steve's written so many things. But is there one piece, it could be whatever, it could be a book, could be a short story, could be whatever, that you could share how the inspiration for it came? Like what was kind of like the reason why you went from aha to like, okay. So if you don't mind, the floor is yours, as they say.
Okay, well, um, I mean, thrillers I've written are just, I love writing them. They're just tons of fun. And if people don't know, there's between a mystery and a thriller. The mystery is a whodunit, who kind of committed the murder. In a thriller, you generally know the good guy and the bad guy, and
Hmm,
you see them coming closer, and
right.
at the end of the book, they've got to, you know, um, duke it out. And of course, the good guy always wins. So I don't know where the
Yeah.
suspense is, but anyway,
Sometimes.
you kind of have to make believe maybe they're not going to make it
Right.
in the end. Um, but my one look into sort of a more literary was I guess three books ago. Was called Careless Love,
Okay.
and it's 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 large. Well, again, the lead character is a Marine, and it's much more of a coming home story, which um, what inspired me to write it was is that I look exactly. I'm told I look exactly like my uncle, who was killed shortly after I was born.
Oh.
So uh, I've been teased my whole life about who my father might really be. So, so that was sort of what set me off on this. And so there's a narrator in Careless Love, and I never in the book ever divulge the fact whether that narrator is a man or a woman. So,
Oh.
um, this person, I'm going to, just for the sake of telling the story, say he,
No,
but
sure.
I never it really, if it could very easily be um, um, a daughter who is searching to find out who um, her real father is. So I just said, I'll say he, but I just said her. But anyway,
Yeah.
so that's the story of it's set in flashback. It's uh, this child's mother was getting divorced from what he believed his whole life his father was his father, and then on her deathbed the mother tells the son that wasn't your father,
Oh.
and
Wow.
you are the product of an affair I had in Hawaii back,
Hmm.
9 months before you were born. um, so he goes back to Hawaii trying to piece together who this man was.
Hmm.
um, so I I mean I can't say I doubt my father's my father, but
Right.
I don't look like him. I look like my uncle from what I hear. Um, I mean, well, it's in the that's also in the little memoir because uh, just to bring people up to speed on the memoir, it's written for point of view of when I was 8 years old,
Yeah.
living above the family bar and restaurant. Um, but in there, I do say everybody, says I look just like my uncle, but every picture I've seen of him, he has a mustache, and I don't have a mustache. So he was
Not at
like,
8.
not an age. So, this person goes back and the the to look for their real father, and it turns out that, and there's a flashback scene to Vietnam. It's a
Hmm.
as one friend of mine had read it, so I just started to read the chapter and had to skip over it because
Oh,
it's a firefight and it's brutal. I mean, it's just
yeah.
I wrote it brutal just because I wanted people to know how
Yeah.
brutal it was and could be in
Mm,
any
right.
firefight combat situation. Um, so yeah, this woman said I just skipped over that. I couldn't read any more of that. But
Mm,
the this this Marine owned a restaurant in New York City, so he's a restaurateur. So I
mm,
use a lot of my experience growing up in that
right.
business, you know, in his backstory, because it's told all in flashbacks. So he's alive,
Mm,
and in these flashbacks, is this child goes back and interviews people who, um, and it starts right out. The book starts right out saying, referring to another man, this is the man who murdered my father. So
wow.
he's going to get killed by the end of the
Right.
book. So
Right.
there's no surprise there. So
Right.
it's
Right.
um, so I won't give it away by saying
Okay.
how he's killed, but so as you're following this story that this child unravels that this person is going to die at the end of the book. There's no getting
Wow.
away from it. Um, so a lot of what comes out of this character is the coming home aspect of Vietnam, which was again
Hmm.
something I had to live through. I had to live through. It sounds terrible, but it was something I did live through.
I
Um,
understand.
when I got off the um, plane coming back from Vietnam and in Travis Air Force Base, California, my sister-in-law was the travel agent. She had sent me a military standby ticket. So other Marines had to go get tickets, and I didn't have to wait in that line. So I went straight to the uh, uh, San Francisco International Airport and went, and you had to wear a uniform for military standby ticket, and gave the ticket to the woman at the TWA counter. And this was just a few days before Christmas in 1968, and she looked at the ticket and tossed it onto the counter, and it slid across the counter and fell off and landed at my feet. And she said, well, Christmas is around the corner, fella. You're just going to have to wait your turn because there's an awful lot of people paying full fare. That was the
Oh,
first person that said anything
God.
to me when I came back from Vietnam. The very
Can you
first
believe that?
American I spoke to. That was my reception.
Horrible.
Um,
Horrible.
and it was, I mean, I got out of the Marine Corps. I went to New York City, as I said, studied photography. Um, and to make ends meet, although I was getting the GI Bill, I worked as a waiter. And so when
Hmm.
I got there, having grown up in the business, I said, well, just to make ends meet, let me go look for a waiter's job. And this is in 1970, so the war was still going on. And I would put on job applications that I had served in the Marine Corps. My thinking was that, well, a potential employer
Yeah.
would look at that and say, oh, great, this guy isn't going to get drafted, so I don't have to worry about him
Right.
being swept away. And I was filling out one application. This guy said, actually said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just putting down the military service. He said, don't put that on your resume. Are you crazy? Nobody's going to hire you if they know you're an ex-Marine.
Oh my God.
So,
Wow.
so I stopped doing that. And then the next job I applied for, I finally got a job waiting tables. But anyway, so a lot of that comes out in not that in the book, but it's, there's a point where this father is in his restaurant in New York City, and this fellow comes in with a beard and long hair, and uh,
Mm,
um, and he's telling his story. This man came in, and turns out he was uh, in he was a guy in this man's platoon. He was an officer, so he was a platoon commander. And uh, he says, "I just," and they had in the
hmm.
Vietnam scene, they had issues
Yeah.
with one another. Um, but he just came back and said, "I just wanted to tell you that you were the best commander I ever had." Blah blah
Oh.
blah. Um, so he's relating this story to the mother, so the mother's only 31 or whatever, when
Hmm.
this is taking place. And she says, "Well, so what happened to him?" And he says, "He hung himself in a hotel room the next night."
Oh.
So, I mean, these are the things that happen. So that's a
Right.
lot of stuff I kind of wanted to get off my chest.
That's right.
That this is the crap that happened to
Right.
people. That's fictional, so that I did make up, but I know that these things happened. So it didn't happen to me personally. I didn't know
Right.
personally someone who did that, but I know it happened, and
Hmm.
um, so
Well, I'm so happy you shared that book, and I'm gonna pick it up. And Careless Love. Um, I like everything you said. As I teach creative writing at the college level, and everyone is always worried about AI now, and how do you get kids not to do AI and AI? And I'm kind of like, well, you can't. You know what I mean? The proverbial horse is out of the barn, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
and but I approached them when to class. I said, listen, my job, I want to show you why you might want to write. Not that you have to. My what can you get out of it? Because not everyone is going to have jobs that they write or write books like us and all that. But even little things. And so when you said it was such offhand, I guess there's something I wanted to get off my chest. That's huge. That's an
yeah,
enormous reason. It's such a good reason to want to write because you can't really get it off your chest if you tell AI, write something about a soldier.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So there is that element here, but I really like how you take this sort of like growing up under this teasing, your uncle looks like that. And even though you knew your dad, there was always it was something in you. And then I see like I also see the artist in you or the when you when you commit to writing books, when you commit to writing, you're sort of looking for things. You're receptive to ideas and you're hunting them. And so I'm gonna think like you. You were thinking, well, this has always been something I think is intriguing, interesting. What about a kid who's got this? All right, now and then you start writing a book, and then again, it's that same kind of thing. The subconscious comes flowing in, and choices and all that, and things you do want to get off your chest. So it's sort of like everything good about writing, the creativity, the fun, the cathartic kind of thing. And I always say about good writing is done for yourself first. It's hard to think because we want to publish and we want people to read it and we want to make all that. But if you can kind of just say, I just want to learn a little bit more about me. I want to maybe feel a little bit better or lighter, and then we'll see where it goes. It always works out. So I really, everything you said really resonated with me.
well, I had the opportunity in that book also to just to have this character um, go off a little bit on things that, and go off is not the right word. He's
Yeah,
not angrily, but it's a love story. I mean, these two people fall deeply in love, and it takes place only in 3 days. But and the agent in California says, "I don't. There's no such thing as love at first sight." And I'm the exact opposite. I said, "No, come on, it happens all the time. If it hasn't happened to you, I feel sorry for you, but it does happen all the
yeah.
time." And so it's love at first sight, and by the end of before he's killed, he's saying, "Listen, I got two tickets." He's of French descent, and so it has and his restaurant is a French restaurant in New York that his father
Uh-huh.
started. So um, he says, "Listen, I'm taking you to Paris tomorrow morning, and this is it. You get rid of your shitty husband. He doesn't care about you, and um, anyway, um, and then he's killed before
Mm.
they can get on the plane. But
Oh,
um, I get to have him tell her because they're become very, very close things that he believes in. So I get to, in writing, you get to get that stuff off your chest.
that's
He's
right.
just saying, the politicians don't get their hands dirty. They don't,
That's right.
they send somebody else's kid off to war. They
That's
don't
right.
send their own kids off to war, and their kids
No,
are raised with that same lack of
empathy.
commitment to service or commitment to making the world a better place because
That's right.
and in a la someone we know who had bone spurs, I mean, he raised his kids to have bone spurs too. So,
That's right.
it's
They,
so I got
that's
to
right.
write about, you get to do that kind of stuff with fiction, you
That's
can
right.
get
No, it's great. It's a great
get it off
point.
your chest.
No, it's a great point. It's not, and dreams. I worked in the mental health field for a long time, and I worked with this person who was a dream expert, and he always says, dreams are what you fantasy, what you want, and what you fear. And I always feel like in writing or creativity or art, we're tapping into that subconscious fears and fantasies. So I remember I was writing a lot of stories when I was younger about guys meeting girls and all that. And I had a book published, and this guy goes, "Why do you have so many, women and men?" Because I wanted to meet a woman. You know what I mean? I mean, I wanted to be cryptic and look like this great art, but it's like, why do you join a band? You know what I mean? But again, that's another aspect. I think writers, I think this is an important dialogue because I think we have to stand up for like why it's important to sit down and go through the hard work and torture because it's good for you. And I knew a writer who before he would date someone would write a story about it to see how it would come out and to see not to. So I kind of dig that. And I feel like your reason you're successful is because it comes from this really um, original, pure place. And then we roll the dice and see how it does out there in the world, and we keep at it. But I appreciate that a lot.
Now I am a fool for love. I mean, all of my books have a love story, and
Yeah.
it's all love at first sight, and
Well,
it's
love
so
is good.
it's so predictable. What could I say?
Yeah. Listen, I mean, that's the thing. I wasn't being clever to the guy. He's like, well, I actually, and luckily I met a good looking, beautiful, nice woman, my wife. So then I could start writing about something else. So,
Well, my last book that came out was speculative fiction, so there's
uh-huh.
aliens in it, but the aliens take human form. So so
Okay.
there's no beasts or any,
That's
like the movie
okay.
Alien. There's none of that stuff that take human form. But of course, my hero, who is in fact an ex-Marine, um, falls in love with this woman, and it turns out she's an alien.
That's all right. That's okay.
You know,
Listen, well, I
He says,
really,
I mean, there's a he when he figures it out, and he's dumbfounded, and finally he says to her, says, I just can't believe I've been making love to an alien all this time. And she said, and at this point in the book, she's
she
telling
says
him
me too.
that the world's going to end. She's telling him the world's going to end. It's speculative fiction, and I'm explaining to you that the world is coming to an end, and all you're worried about is where you've been sticking your reproductive organ for the last 3 months.
Well, well, yes. I get it. I love talking to writers and because it's funny, we live with these characters and we can pull up lines and all that. I don't know who it was Dostoevsky or Tolstoy on his deathbed was Fever Dream was talking to all his characters and all that. So we got that to look forward to, Steve, one day. We
Right.
can, um, well, I really admire you and you're very articulate about your craft and a very uh, successful and productive artistic person. And again, I appreciate your service and all you did. And do, and also that you're still doing it for us.
Well,
You know,
I think, I really do feel very blessed to have, um, um, so I mean, just all the way back to Cordelia, my wife's first book, who was picked up by Simon and Schuster, and Michael Korda, who was head of Simon and Schuster at the time, wrote a book called Charmed Lives, which he grew up in the Korda family, which was they were crazy film people,
mm,
and I really feel blessed to have been
well,
able to do what I've wanted to do most of my life and have
well,
fun doing it.
well, that's a testament to you. You said I was dumb enough to think I could do it, but I would say you're courageous enough. You know what I mean? A lot of people,
Well, that's what, you know, it's the old, I, you know, I,
eh,
I, I should have been killed when I was 19 years old. So
well, but you,
it's gravy. Everything's
yeah,
gravy. I
well,
got out of there. I landed at the at Travis Air Force Base in 1968 and just got off the plane. There was not a gangway. You had to go down the steps to get off the plane. Just
right, right.
went down and kissed the ground. I mean,
Well,
and another
God bless you. God bless you
Marine
and
came and
everyone,
did the same thing and said,
everyone.
it's gravy from here on out.
Well, listen, I appreciate you and everything. The people that do this, and I appreciate just as much for your art too. And I'm looking forward to your new books. I'm going to put your links on for people who want to look at Steve's past work and his upcoming work. I really recommend it. And maybe we'll have you back sometime to talk about another one.
Right?
So
Great.
this
It'll
was really
be
fun.
fun. This was a lot
So
of fun.
it is fun. So if you like what you like out there, like us, subscribe so you never miss another show. And please read Steve's books. And if you like them, write something to him. He's a good dude. He'll write you back.
Yeah, there's um, a contact button on my website. So
There
it's
you go.
stevezettler.com, and you can absolutely
And
love to
and
hear from
and
people.
and I like if I have a Marine, I like them bald. So that's good. So that's okay.
Well, you're bald anyway, whether you have hair
They're
or
bald.
not. They just take it
Well,
off.
all right. Well, thank you so much, Steve, and have
Thank
a
you, John.
never. Okay, bye bye.